Morning. I am excited to preach this morning.
Let's go.
All right. I'm especially excited because of the passage that we have before us this morning. And this is not a simple, straightforward passage. So as we study this passage, I want you to think about tomorrow morning as you get to work and you're talking to one of the people that you've been trying to reach out to, and they bring up this passage. They saw a video or a teaching about basically what we're going to get into. Jesus is going to say some things that are really uncomfortable and do some things. And not in the usual uncomfortable that we're used to, where it's like, man, I really need to do better. I need to be more like Jesus. It's going to be more of, man, Jesus sounds like a racist and a jerk right now. So church is going to be a little different this morning. So again, imagine tomorrow when you get to work, somebody mentioning this and kind of coming back against what you've been sharing about Jesus. Or maybe your kids are starting to get into the word more. And they hit this passage and they have questions. Really good questions. Or maybe you're asked to teach this in front of a congregation in the entire unforgiving internet. So I appreciate your prayers this morning as we dig into Matthew chapter 15, starting on verse 21. It says, "Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, 'Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed.' But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, 'Send her away, for she cries out after us.' But he answered and said, 'I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.' Then she came and worshipped him, saying, 'Lord, help me.' But he answered and said, 'It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs.' And she said, 'Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table.' Then Jesus answered and said to her, 'O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire.' And her daughter was healed from that very hour. Jesus departed from there, skirted the Sea of Galilee, and went up on the mountain and sat down there. Then great multitudes came to him, having with them the lame, blind, mute, maimed, and many others. And they laid them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. So the multitude marveled when they saw the mute speaking, the maimed made whole, the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And they glorified the God of Israel. So have you ever, seen one of those movies that starts out with this big climactic moment, stuff's exploding, big action sequence, and then it kind of stops and backs up, and you follow different people's lives as they travel kind of to that same event, and it culminates back where it started. That's basically what we're going to do this morning. We're going to get into the sandals, as it were, of the people in the story. We have three main characters. We have this woman, we have Jesus, and the disciples. And first we're going to see a picture of where we're at, get into the soil, as it were. Down kind of in the middle, you see the Dead Sea, and then you follow the Jordan River up to the Sea of Galilee, kind of up closer to the north. That's where Jesus spent most of his time, did most of his ministry. That's where we're kind of started. It says, then Jesus went to Tyre and Sidon. So if you look at the northwest coast, way up in the corner, that's Tyre and Sidon. So Jesus and his disciples are going to travel 20 to 50 miles to get to the coast area up there. And so that's where we're going to be. And the first person we're going to look at this morning is this woman. So we're going to pull some stuff from Mark. We have the same story in the Gospel of Mark. And so we're going to look at 5 descriptors that are given for this woman. And we want to get into her sandals again and understand who she is so we can really understand what's going on here. So number one, she's listed as a woman, which Jewish men generally did not speak openly to women out in public. Secondly, she's listed as a Canaanite. So now we got to go do a little bit of history. So the nation of Israel, before it was ever a nation, was a family that ended up in Egypt. They grew and multiplied and ended up in slavery under the Pharaoh there. And God calls this man, Moses, to go rescue them. When he rescues them, they leave Egypt under God's mighty hand. They travel through the wilderness and eventually end up at the land of Canaan. It's full of people. And God commands the nation of Israel to conquer and utterly destroy the Canaanite people, to drive them out, because he says, "For they will turn your sons away from me to serve other gods." And that's exactly what happened. The Jewish people did not utterly conquer them. Instead, they kind of commingled, and they ended up falling away from the Lord. And so when we hear that she's a Canaanite, that's what we should think of. Because you see, Matthew is a Jewish man writing primarily to Jewish people. So there's things that we miss by pulling a passage of Scripture out of context 2,000 years later, halfway around the globe in our culture. We have to dig in just a little bit deeper. So she's listed as a woman. She's listed as a Canaanite. She's called a Syrophoenician. So usually people would ask what I'm preaching on. I'd say the Syrophoenician woman, and they go, "Oh, okay, this will be interesting." So Syrophoenician, that kind of area that we looked up on the map, is the Phoenician area. It was conquered by Syria, so Syria was ruling that area, so she's listed as a Syrophoenician woman. What that kind of means for us is she didn't just move to this section. She's been there. Her family has been there. She's an ancestral Canaanite. She's a Canaanite. Her family may have lived there since God gave the command to wipe them out. The fourth one is she's a woman from Tyre and Sidon. Tyre and Sidon, we saw, is way up along the coast. But for any Jewish boy, hearing woman from Tyre and Sidon would bring one name to your mind, and that's Jezebel. Tyre and Sidon were the center of Baal worship, and Jezebel was the most vile, idolatrous woman in Jewish history. She was married to King Ahab, and if you've heard the story of Elijah calling down fire from heaven as he battles against all of the Baal prophets, Jezebel is the one that said, "I will have you killed." The fifth term that we hear is that she's a Greek. Now, this may mean that she spoke Greek, but more likely, this is more of her religious views. As a Greek, she probably had the pantheon of gods that she worshiped. And is that why Jesus is treating her like this? Is that why Jesus seems to ignore her and insult her? Because of who she is? Because of her family? Because of her history? Because of her bloodline? Because of her religion? Because of her location? I don't think so, but I have to pause and say he can. In all perfect justice and righteousness, he can. Because if she's coming to him saying, "Give me what I want or need, and then I'm going to go back and worship the false gods that I want to, and do what I want to do, and reject her creator," he can. But again, I don't think that's what's happening right now. So we're going to now step into the sandals of Jesus. We're going to spend most of our time, go figure, there. And we're going to basically speed read the book of Matthew. So get ready. I will paraphrase quite a bit. But as we get into the book of Matthew, pay attention to what's going on. We're going to start, as Matthew begins, he starts with a genealogy. And most genealogies are father to son, father to son, father to son. He's laying out the history of Jesus' family. And it's interesting because you get a whole 5 verses in, and you see a woman listed. So you have to stop and really pay attention when you see this name Rahab. Now, who's Rahab? We talked earlier about the Jewish people coming out of Egypt, and going to the promised land. Well, as they get to the promised land, Joshua is getting ready to take them in, and there's one city that they encounter first, a huge walled city named Jericho. And he sends 2 spies in. As the spies go in, they're sheltered by this woman, Rahab. And Rahab helps them and sends them back and asks only that she be saved when they conquer the city. She's confident that it's going to happen. She believes in the power of their God. And that's exactly what happens. She brings her family into her house and hangs a red cord outside the window. And Jericho is destroyed, and Rahab becomes the first Canaanite convert into the Jewish people. So we see in Jesus' genealogy, Rahab is actually the great-great-great-grandmother of King David. So in Jesus' genealogy, his super great-grandmother is a Canaanite. So as we go on in the book of Matthew, we read about Jesus' birth and jump ahead 30 years to his baptism, his temptation in the wilderness, and then he comes back from that and he calls his disciples. And the very first thing that happens after he calls his disciples is in Matthew chapter 4, verse 23. It says, "And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease among the people. Then his fame went throughout all Syria, and they brought to him all sick people who were afflicted with various diseases and torments, and those who were demon-possessed, epileptics, and paralytics, and he healed them." Did you notice a couple words in there? His fame went throughout all Syria. So the first thing that Jesus does in his ministry after calling the disciples is to heal people from Syria, including demon-possessed people. So again, thinking about the woman, the Syro-Phoenician woman, the Canaanite woman with a demon-possessed daughter, it seems unlikely that that's the reason that Jesus almost seems to reject her. So as we go on from there, he goes up on a mountain and teaches the Sermon on the Mount and comes down and he heals a leper, amazingly by touching him, which is ridiculous because leprosy was a highly contagious, incurable, fatal disease. And it's more ridiculous because right after that, Jesus heals a Roman centurion servant by not even going to the house. Which means he never had to touch him. But we have to pay attention to this Roman centurion. In Matthew chapter 8, this Roman centurion comes to Jesus, and as a Roman centurion, he has a level of authority and power in the Roman army. He is not just a normal Roman citizen, he's a Roman. And as this man comes to Jesus, he says that his servant is excuse me. He says that his servant is lying at home, paralyzed and dreadfully tormented. And so you have a very non-Jewish person coming to Jesus for somebody that's not there. What do you believe is more important, a servant or a daughter? What would be worse, to be paralyzed or severely demon-possessed? Just keep that in mind. So, what is Jesus' response to this Roman centurion? In verse 7, Jesus immediately says, I will come and heal him. So we have a very similar story with very glaring differences. Jesus immediately says, I will come and heal him, and the centurion says, don't bother. I understand authority. I have people under me. I tell them what to do, and they go do it. You're a man of authority. You can take care of this without ever coming into my home. Because it would have made Jesus unclean to walk into the Gentile's house. Apparently, that didn't matter to Jesus, who also can touch a leper without becoming unclean. But Jesus applauds his great faith at this moment, and we see Jesus applaud great faith one other time. And that's with the Syrophoenician woman. So again, we have to pay attention to what Matthew is telling us throughout his entire gospel. And not just that moment, that uncomfortable moment, because I'll tell you, Jesus likes uncomfortable moments. So as we go on from this Roman centurion, Jesus goes to Peter's house, heals his mom who isn't feeling well, and that evening they brought many who were demon-possessed, and he healed them. Obviously, he does not have a problem with demon-possessed people. After that, the disciples and Jesus hop in a boat. Jesus says, we're going to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, Jesus is asleep in the boat, and there is a terrible storm. And when I say a terrible storm, the disciples come to Jesus and say, we are about to die. If you didn't realize, most of the disciples were fishermen on the Sea of Galilee. This is not their first time. They have grown up and lived here. So when they say we're dying, this was a terrible storm. And Jesus, the first thing that he does is rebuke the disciples for their little faith. Remember, the centurion just got applauded for his great faith, and now the disciples are rebuked for their little faith. And then Jesus calms the storm. And they are amazed that he has power and authority over the weather and over the elements. And right after this, they land on the other shore, and two dirty, naked, violent, demon-possessed men show up and come and talk to, well, they don't talk to Jesus, the demons talk to Jesus. And the demons beg to be cast into a herd of pigs nearby, and Jesus allows it, and the pigs immediately run off a cliff and kill themselves. Imagine what it was like for those men. And after this, the people in that area ask him to leave, and they get right back in the boat and go back. So they went all that way through a terrible storm to heal those two men and leave. And it's an interesting, a few details in that story. The men lived among the tombs, and the demons were cast into pigs. That means almost 99% sure those men were not Jewish, because those two things would make you unclean. If they were Jewish, they might as well not have been if they lived in that area. So now we have to slow down a little bit because we're getting real close to the section where Jesus is going to talk to this woman. In Matthew chapter 10, Jesus sends out the 12 disciples. They've been following him for probably about 2 years. It says, and when he had called his 12 disciples to him, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease. And jump to verse 5. These 12 Jesus sent out and commanded them, saying, do not go into the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter a city of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. So he commissions them and sends them out on this mission trip, as it were, 2 by 2. And as they go, it says, when Jesus finished commanding his 12 disciples in chapter 11, verse 1, he departed from there to teach and preach in their cities. So as they go off and leave Jesus alone, he goes to continue teaching and preaching. And somewhere in this, he receives word that his cousin has been murdered. His cousin John. His cousin John, who leapt for joy in his mother's womb when Mary walked in the room. His cousin John, who baptized him into the ministry just 2 years previously. His cousin John, who it was prophesied would prepare the way of the Lord and make the path straight. His cousin John, who declared, behold the Lamb of God. His cousin John, who was beheaded by a weak-willed, morally deficient Roman leader who now had his eyes set on Jesus. So as Jesus is mourning the loss of his cousin and minding the fact that the Roman leader of that area wanted him dead, he's being harassed by the Pharisees, the religious leaders. He's being rejected in his own hometown and even by his own family. Jesus is dealing with all of this. And you have to remember, this is God incarnate. Jesus is God in the flesh. That means he experienced things that we do. He got hot and cold, depending on the day. He got hungry, he got tired, and he is dealing with all of this at this moment. And as he's dealing with all of this, his disciples return excited to share what they've been doing and what God has been doing through them. And in Mark chapter 6, it says that then the apostles gathered to Jesus. Now, a moment ago, they were called disciples. The word apostle means sent ones. They have now been commissioned to go forward. They are now apostles. It says, then the apostles gathered to Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. And he said to them, come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. So they departed to a deserted place in the boat by themselves. But the multitude saw them departing, and many knew him and ran there on foot from the cities. They arrived before him and came together to him. And Jesus, when he came out, saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion for them, because they were like sheep not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. This is amazing. Everything that Jesus is dealing with right now, and he says, look, we don't even have time to eat. I read this, I would be hangry. I'm an introvert. I need alone time. Jesus is like, look, let's go over here where we can actually talk and eat and rest. And it says a multitude came. This is the feeding of the 5,000. And that's 5,000 men. Men plus women and children, so probably 15 to 20,000 people. So instead of getting rest and getting to talk with his disciples, he's moved with compassion. That would not be my response. He is moved with compassion, and he teaches them until the day is well spent. He taught them until it's late, and the disciples come to him and say, send these people away so they can get something to eat. And probably selfishly, so we can get something to eat and take a break. And Jesus instead looks at them and says, you feed them. And they're shocked. Like, how are we going to feed them? There's no way. There's not enough bread. We don't have any money. They just returned from a mission trip where Jesus told them, don't take anything. And they find a young boy with a small lunch, and Jesus tells his apostles, have the people sit in groups, make them sit in groups. He then hands the apostles bread and says, distribute this to the people. So the disciples come to Jesus and go to the people and come to Jesus and go to the people and come to Jesus and go to the people. There's 20,000 people. This is going to take a while. There's 12 apostles. We read over this really quickly without getting into the moment of what is going on here. At the end of this, it says that everyone is full. And that Jesus tells the disciples, go and get the leftovers and gather them together. And it says that they filled 12 baskets full. And these would have been like picnic basket-sized baskets. And there's 12 apostles, and there's 12 baskets. So I have to imagine that every one of them in this moment is standing before roughly 20,000 Jewish people filled to the full with a basket full of crumbs. And after this, Jesus tells his disciples to head to the other side of the lake. He says, go ahead of me, I'll catch up with you. And they get into the boat and they begin leaving. And it says Jesus went and spent time in prayer. And the next thing we see is the fourth watch of the night, which is between 3 and 6 a.m. So I don't know if Jesus got a nap at all or if he just prayed for hours. I'm exhausted reading this, let alone what he was dealing with. But he spent time with his Father. And it says that he saw them rowing in the middle of the Sea of Galilee. And they were struggling because the wind was contrary. I just like that word. But they're struggling and getting nowhere in the middle of the sea once again, except this time Jesus is not in the boat. But he still sees them. And the next thing we see is Jesus walking across the waves, making to look as if he was going to pass by. He just starts walking by the boat. And they think it's a ghost, and Jesus says, no, it's me. Relax. Peter says, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come out there. And Jesus says, come on. And Peter does what I think is the dumbest thing ever and actually gets out of the boat. Like a ghost is not going to lie to you and say, yeah, I'm Jesus, come on. I don't know, that's just me. I would not have gotten out of the boat. But Peter does an amazing thing, and he steps out and he walks on the water. And then it says that he got distracted by the wind and the waves, and he began to sink. And Jesus was there. And they walked back to the boat. This summer, I'd like to see some of you out at the community pool practicing walking on water, and tell me how long it takes you to sink. Because I did try this when I was younger. Even in like floaty sandals, thinking that, see how far you can get, see it, and it's really fast. But it says Peter began to sink and Jesus was there. And the first thing that he says to Peter is, "O you of little faith." So when they get to the other side, Matthew 14:35 says that when they recognized Jesus, they sent into all the region and brought all people who were sick and he healed them. Jesus is still healing and caring for people with everything that he's gone through. I hope he got a nap in there somewhere. But this is what's going on as we step into the next section. You see the Pharisees show up with one of the most ridiculous arguments against Jesus, and he kind of snaps on them and corrects them. And the disciples ask some of the dumbest questions. You can go back and read it. And at this point, Jesus says, okay, now we're going to go a little bit further. We're going to get away. And they go 20 to 50 miles to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And that brings us back. And in Mark chapter 7, verse 24, it says that he entered a house and wanted no one to know it. So once again, we see Jesus trying to get away with his disciples. We see people showing up, interrupting that. And we even see the disciples asking for Jesus to send them away. So as we return to Matthew chapter 15, I want to focus on Jesus and the disciples for a moment. Because it says that, behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed. And he answered her not a word. It doesn't say that he ignored her. It says that he answered her not a word. There is a silence there. If you have ever led a Bible study or youth group, you need to learn to marinate in that silence. Because if you ask a question, a lot of times people wait because you have the answer. You're the professional, you're the one leading this, you must have the answer. So you have to wait. Sometimes you have that one talkative person that you have to tell them, you get to answer one time tonight, because we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to sit in this silence. What has happened in between the last time people came to him? What has happened and different from when the Roman came to him and he immediately went to help? The disciples have become apostles. Jesus waits and gives them the opportunity and the time to step up. He has given them authority and power to take care of demon-possessed people. And it says, but he answered not a word. And then his disciples came and urged him, saying, send her away, for she cries out after us. And he answered them and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This should get a response from the disciples. I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. What about the Syrians on day one? What about the Roman centurion? What about the lepers? What about all of the sinners and Gentiles and Samaritans and tax collectors, as they point to one of the disciples? What about all of these people that you took care of that have nothing to do with the lost sheep of Israel? Why are we in Tyre and Sidon? It seems like Tyre is just inside Israel, but it doesn't seem like the Israelites ever got to that section. So why are we in Tyre and Sidon if you have only been sent to the lost sheep of Israel? And I have to imagine one of the things that popped into their head as this woman showed up was the commissioning that Jesus gave them. And in that commissioning, he said, don't go to the Gentiles or Samaritans, but go to the lost sheep of Israel. He did not say go only to the lost sheep of Israel. He said go to the lost sheep of Israel. But he has lived out the mission in front of them of the lost sheep of Israel plus. But in their mind, they have made an excuse that Jesus told us to go to the lost sheep of Israel. They also struggle with the fact that this Canaanite, Syrophoenician woman from Tyre and Sidon that is also a Greek does not fit that category at all. And so the very next thing that happens after Jesus tells them that he has only been sent to the lost sheep of Israel, she came and worshiped him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he answers her in front of the disciples and says, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." First of all, that's offensive. Jesus does clean it up a little bit. He softens it. The term he uses for little dog is little house dog, not the outside mangy wild dogs that generally Jewish people would have referred to a woman like this. And Jesus seems to soften it, but at the same time, it is offensive today to call a woman a dog, and we also have a harsher word for that, even now, 2,000 years later. But to say this, to hear these words coming out of Jesus' mouth, shocks the disciples. As much as if I said something horribly offensive right now, I may get some people paying attention for the first time. But I would have everybody's attention and everyone would be concerned. The disciples hear Jesus say these words to this person, to this woman. And I have to imagine that they had been thinking a lot of those things. And Jesus is calling out those things in their heart, those excuses, those ideas of who people are. And I have to imagine, especially as the woman says, "Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." I have to imagine that they pictured standing there. Standing in front of the lost sheep of Israel, completely filled with a basket of crumbs. Jesus is a great teacher. And I have to also stop and think, is Jesus just using this woman as a lesson for the disciples? Because that seems harsh too. So now we're going to look at Jesus and the woman's interaction. You see, this woman, this Greek-believing Syrophoenician Canaanite woman in the land of Tyre and Sidon, is also a mother. With a severely demon-possessed daughter. Do you not think that this woman has gone to Baal about her daughter and entreated him over and over as she lives within the center of Baal worship? Do you not believe as a Canaanite and a Syrophoenician that she has not entreated every one of her ancestral gods for her daughter? Do you not believe that she has gone to every god in the Greek pantheon for her daughter? Do you not think that she has gone to every physician and person that she can think of to take care of this problem, to help her daughter? And now she hears about this Jewish man coming to town and the things that he has done, and that he is reported to be a Messiah of the Jews. And she uses this messianic term as he comes into town. She says, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed." And usually when we hear this term, it is a recognition of Jesus as the Messiah, but I believe when she says it, it is the Messiah of the Jews. This is actually a distance that I believe you are the Messiah of the Jews, while I am a Canaanite, Syrophoenician woman from Tyre and Sidon. And so Jesus waits. He answered her not a word. Instead, she hears the disciples ask him to send her away. And she hears the worst thing she could imagine. "I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." That's exactly what she's thinking. I'm not an Israelite. I am not a Jewish person. This is the Messiah of the Jews, but I have no other option. And so in that heartbreak and passion and care for her daughter, she falls at his feet. It says she worshiped him, saying, "Lord, help me." So she's now gone from over here to his feet and calling him Lord. And it says that he answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." And interestingly, as I said, this is not a mangy wild dog, which is probably what she has heard about what Jewish people think she is and what she thinks Jesus probably thinks she is. And he instead says, no, you're in the house. What Jesus is doing to call out the things in the hearts of the disciples, Jesus is doing to call in this woman. Because notice, the next thing she says is, "Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." Now he's her master. Now she recognizes him as her master. She has gone from the king of the Jews to her master. And even with that idea, I wonder if she had a dog at home and realized how much she cared and loved for that dog, that she would not be rejected if he was her master. And he goes on and answers and says, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire." Once again, we see that great faith as she understands his authority in her life and her position to that, where you have the disciples telling Jesus to send her away. Did you notice that? That's not how you talk to your master. They had a little faith because they did not understand the authority that God had in their lives yet. Even being given authority over demons and the ability to raise the dead. But this woman, in her need, understood that he was now her master. So hopefully that makes a little more sense of what's going on here as we get into it. And now is kind of the so what of the sermon. Like I said, I hope we feel a lot better about this. What is God teaching you? What is Jesus teaching you right now? Is he drawing things out of your heart? Is he revealing things that shouldn't be there? Like the way that you see people, maybe that coworker that annoys you, or that neighbor or family members that you see as somebody that God needs to take care of. Send them away or fix that problem. Because when the disciples say, "Send her away," it could mean, can you take care of her problem so she'll leave us alone? It doesn't mean just get rid of her. But do we pray that about the people in our lives? God, can you handle that when he has given us authority and power to do that? Or maybe God is calling you in closer. Maybe you have tried everything else. And you have heard about an answer. You have heard about your friend's God or the Christian God. And at this point, you are here because you have no other options. You've tried everything else. Well, the amazing thing is, there is enough of the bread for all of us. Jesus is the bread of life. So this morning, we're going to have prayer partners in the back. So if you feel like you need prayer, they are excited and ready to pray with you. If you feel the need to pray for things that God is bringing to mind, people God is bringing to mind, or if you are just ready to call him master or even know more, I ask that you head back there as Amy sings this next song. And the questions on your blue card are, what is God teaching you right now or trying to? And so let me go ahead and finish closing us in prayer. Heavenly Father, Master, I thank you. I thank you for the way that you love and care for us. I thank you that you will make us uncomfortable to grow us and to draw us near. I just pray that you'll teach us, help us to understand what you're trying to teach us and to accept it and to walk in it, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.